Everybody remembers their first brisket. Some folks remember it like their first love, others like a crime scene. But today we're fixing that. I'm going to show you how to make a juicy backyard brisket without losing your sanity or your Saturday. Today I'm sharing 10 brisket tips to help you cook with confidence. Let's make it happen. The very first step is choosing the right meat. Don't grab the one that looks like it went 3 rounds with Mike Tyson. And neither do you want the one that's just covered in fat. You want to see striations of fat throughout the fibers. And if you're dreaming of a tender brisket, see if that fat will bend a bit for you. Those tend to cook better and retain their juice. Well, this one is buckled up and ready for the ride home. And now it's time to introduce this lovely piece of meat to my family. The day before is always prep day for me. Time to get Mr. Covington ready for his next challenge. What, you don't name your smokers? Or do you? Let me know in the comments. Now our next big tip, trimming for even cooking. Now I'm not going to bore you with my whole trim, but did you ever notice how aerodynamic a Bugatti Veyron is or a classic Corvette? Well, it's similar with a brisket. You want the heat and smoke to just coast over the surface of the meat, not locking onto any sharp spots which will dry out and probably burn. And although fat is flavor, some of that needs to be trimmed away as well. But don't throw any of that fat away. That's good eating that can be used in burgers, chili, or making tallow like I'm doing later in this cook. And if you want a step-by-step process on how to trim a brisket, just follow this link. All in all, I'm happy with this brisket. The butcher scalped it some, and I might have nicked it as well, but it's all good. Tip number 3 is the magic of dry brine. Honestly, this is something I've been experimenting with lately, and I absolutely love the results on brisket. Use about a ½ teaspoon of kosher salt per pound, and that's like your flavor insurance. This is going to pull moisture up, allowing it to mix with natural juices in the meat, and then that happy marriage will pull itself right back into the meat. This will give it a deep, penetrating flavor, so you don't end up with just tasty bark and a bland middle. And yeah, you want to salt that fat cap too. Now, it's not going to flavor the meat underneath that fat cap, but that caramelized, yellowish, sugar cookie-like fat that you get at the end of a brisket loves the addition of salt, and it helps that fat render smoothly instead of seizing up. So by all means, brine your entire brisket and reap the results. After brining, let it rest uncovered in the refrigerator overnight so that surface dries up. And that's how you get bark so pretty your neighbors just happen to walk by. It's the next day and we move on to the next tip of the process, which is adding 16 mesh pepper before you rub. Now it might be tempting to use your favorite beef rub, like my cattle dry beef rub, and I'll leave the recipe for that in the comments below, but pepper goes first. Now what's the reason for that? Well, the reason is because I'm using a coarse grind of pepper, so it tends to dominate when it comes out of your shaker, and it may not give you even coverage. Uh-oh, we've got a problem. I guess I'm more tired than I thought. Yep, left the plastic on top of the shaker. Duh. All right, well, time to use my Thermapen here. Bust open the cap a little bit. Bear with me, folks, this is obviously pre-coffee. The cap back on, I think I can manage that, and voila! We've got 16 mesh pepper. So yeah, as I was saying, the reason I'm applying the pepper first is because this is a coarse grind of pepper and it dominates when it comes out of the shaker. And so you may not get even coverage on your meat. So I'm making sure that I get the spices everywhere it needs to go, on the fat cap, on the meat, but always remember the pepper comes first. And you remember that tip about a tender brisket, making sure it bends? Well, notice what happens here. That's what you want. You want a brisket that bends like this because it's going to be tender, it's going to be great, and it'll cook beautifully on your smoker. So I'm just coming over the top now with the cattle drive rub. That rests right on top of the brisket. It's going to season it beautifully. This is going to be a happy marriage of brine, of pepper, of rub. This thing's going to the pit. Let's go. You can tell here upon close examination how evenly the pepper is distributed, but also how evenly the rub sits on top of it. And that's what you want, and that's why you apply it differently. As you can see here in the sunlight, it's already forming a beautiful crust. And now to the next step of the process. Now tip number 5, you want to start smokier than you normally would. Now this step may ruffle some feathers. Look, I'm a firm believer in cool blue smoke rolling out of your stack, but there is a time and place for heavier smoke. Notice I didn't say dirty smoke, but perhaps a little whiter than normal. But why is that? Well, unlike other meats, a large beef brisket can stand a bit more smoke. but my process is all about balance. I give it more smoke than normal during the first few hours of the cook. I then clean up the smoke as it goes. I use a bundle fire, as you'll see shortly, which basically means putting two splits right next to each other for minimal airflow. Cutting down somewhat on the air produces more smoke. However, I make sure to keep my exhaust stack wide open so that any stale air or smoke can escape. The trick is you want a little bit of white smoke to start. You shouldn't be smoking like a freight train. Then I dial it in, and once it settles, I feed clean splits with plenty of oxygen so the smoke runs thin and blue. Tip number 6, I ramp my temps over time. Oftentimes I'll put my brisket on as the pit is even coming up to temp. If you jump straight to 300, your brisket will tighten up like a cheap t-shirt in the dryer. Your briskets will seize up, and even the flat may curl a bit, which means it's drying out. The benefits of ramping your temperature gradually means that it significantly shortens the dreaded stall. So if you're trying this, maybe try getting your fire going, putting your brisket on, and then increasing it over time. 200 degrees, 230, 250, 275, and then finish at 300 to properly render that fat. Tip number 7, color comes with patience. This is the hard part because it's so tempting to keep raising the lid. But you gotta let it cook, man. Keep warming your splits of wood so they're ready. Focus on your fire management. Go smoky first and then clean it up gradually in the cook. And your patience will be rewarded. Tip number 8, trust the ramp. Now normally briskets hit a stall in the 160s, but guess what? Because you ramp the temps gradually, you'll likely shoot right through that stall or at minimum shorten it considerably. Most important thing for you to do right now is trust the ramp. Don't crank that temp if it stalls a bit. I promise you, the needle will start moving soon enough, and you'll be dancing like I am right now, looking forward to an awesome brisket because you ramped gradually. And I'll be the first to admit I do sometimes steal my daughter's things from time to time. Now this is about 4 to 5 hours in the cook. Notice I've cleaned up my smoke. I'm allowing a lot more air to penetrate the firebox, so you got a better flame, less smoke, but a good amount of smoke. And notice the color. So I'll spritz now because I'm noticing a little bit of dryness on the cap. Don't just spritz just to spritz. Make sure you see dryness first, and then you can, of course, moisten that up a bit. The color is coming in nicely. Nice mahogany color, as you can see. I've got tallow as well that's forming up. It's smoking. It's looking great. It's going to be a great addition when I wrap this brisket. There again, more oxygen flow. It's all about balance. And look what it does to that color, that mahogany color. A little bit of seepage of course, juice rendering out, so you may not get perfect bark, but it'll be good bark. And that's all I care about. I'm wrapping some edges of the brisket that are facing the firebox since they may burn quicker than others, just to protect it and make sure that it cooks evenly. But all in all, I'm very pleased with how this brisket is looking. Fantastic color. Again, I have a little bit more juice on the surface than I would like, but it's a great brisket. Tallow looks good, and look how it looks on my board. Beautiful. Ready for the next step of my process. Tip number 9, you want to wrap and rest that brisket. I'm very pleased with the way this brisket turned out. I took this brisket to about 190 degrees on the pit. I know a lot of people tend to cook their briskets to about 203, 205 degrees, but I like taking it a little short of that and letting the rest take care of the rest. Check that out. So I'm using that tallow. I'm actually going to hydrate the brisket some, and I'm going to double wrap this brisket. I'll let it sit out for probably about 20 to 30 minutes just to come down in temperature a little bit because it's still cooking quite a bit. And then from there, I let it rest. Make sure that foil is wrapped very tightly because you don't want any air, you don't want steaming of the bark. And now I set my oven up for 145 degrees. I'm actually able to hack my oven a bit. I'll put it in there and it'll rest overnight, take a nice long nap, and it'll be lunchtime. One thing about me, you're going to see the real me in my videos. I am so tired and delirious at this point. This has been a labor of love, but I am exhausted. But I'm so pleased with how this brisket looks. That bark is on point. It's like a meteorite. But let me tell you, that's good flavor. That whole process with the brine, the pepper, the rub, and the time under that heat has yielded great results. The final tip is slicing against the grain. Here's the deal. You cut against that grain, that way your teeth don't have to do all the work. Every slice stays tender, juicy, and easy to chew. You'll have brisket slices clapping their approval for all your hard work. That smokier fire at the beginning gave you a great smoke ring, and the heat caramelized that fat. Let's recap those 10 steps. You've got to choose the right brisket. Remember, a flexible brisket is a tender brisket. Second, you want to trim it for even cooking. Think aerodynamics. Third, don't forget the dry brine, including the fat cap. Fourth, pepper first, because you want a balanced bark. 5, smoky first, then let it breathe as the cook goes on. 6, ramp your heat slowly and steady, and that will shorten the stall. 7, let it cook and the color will come. Just let the heat do its work. 8, don't panic and spike the temp. Trust the ramp and the process. Number 9, wrap and rest that brisket at around 190 on low heat overnight for maximum juiciness. And finally, number 10, cut against the grain and win the game. Alright y'all, we did it. You just walked through 10 solid tips to take the fear out of brisket and replace it with confidence. And that's what we do inside the Smokers Guild. We cook, we learn, and we help each other make barbecue that's worth bragging about. So if you're ready for more step-by-step playbooks, monthly challenges, and a crew that's got your back, join us inside the Smokers Guild. The link is in the bio.